Most of you guys are college students, and a lot of the classes that you take have this syllabus that has all of your learning objectives on it. And this list is really good to use as a map for anything you're trying to get into, but it's not the whole thing. And we think that there are some cool things you can learn in school that are not on it, or not that usually don't show up on syllabus. Just things like networking, getting to know the people around you, because they're really a wealth of knowledge that can be tapped at any time. And there are a lot of similarities between undergrad students and grads, and it's usually not seen that way because undergrads generally interact with grad students in this context of like the grad student is teaching this introductory lab, and so you see them more in their element doing things that are pretty easy for them, and maybe you're a little too shy to approach them and ask them about their research or if there is something I might be interested in, either in academia or outside in industry. And something really good can happen if we do step out of our element and ask them about what they're doing, outside of class and homework. Because a conversation about a particular research project could turn into a conversation about learning, Python or MATLAB, and those are really transferable skills to a lot of the internships that we're trying to apply for, and maybe some of the jobs that we're interested in. And the grad students also might have some life experience that we don't have. They may have taken a couple of years off in between the programs, and maybe they've applied for some of the jobs that you're interested in, or maybe they've been rejected from some of the jobs that you're interested in and can help you cope with that. But some of them may have even worked a little bit, and so that can be really valuable too.
So the graduate students that you're going to encounter, they're really the same as you. The reason that we're doing this is that we're both in the same department. We hang out and do stuff all the time. Presentations together. We do presentations together. We work together. We even sometimes talk in the same microphone. So the idea is that in your university, you are likely surrounded by grad students at all the time. And you may not realize it. And the example that I draw from is before I came to San Francisco State, I was at the University of Michigan. And our office for the undergraduates was directly next door to the office for the first year graduate students. And we never talked to them at all. And there's many opportunities, like Aaron said, that we could have to have these exchanges for the undergrads to learn from the grad students. But because of their trepidation or any sort of class difference we might think is there was never that connection. And the reality of it is that we're really the same people. The graduate students and a senior undergraduate have a difference of about 6 months of life experience. The important thing, though, is that 6 months is a really important time for the undergrad. And it's a great opportunity to hear from the graduate student and tell them about those things that they don't know what they're doing. They haven't applied for it, so they don't know.
That's right. Yeah, a friend of mine recently got a job as a data analyst with a financial firm. And he went through the terminal master's program at our school, San Francisco State. And he was able to introduce me to just a lot of career options that I hadn't really considered, and just answer a lot of questions I had and send me ebooks on C++ and whatnot. And I wouldn't have really been able to have that experience so easily if we didn't have this shared communal space where it's just a huge kind of crockpot, and you don't even really know the first week of each semester or year if someone's an undergrad or a grad student, just because it's not the first thing that's mentioned. I mean, of course, very quickly you see someone's textbook, but it's not our conversation starters quickly. So yeah, we think that this is really good stuff, and undergrads should seek these opportunities out whenever possible.
And there's a lot of different ways to do this. So if you're an undergrad, from your perspective, many of you are, you can take the initiative and go and hunt down a grad student and interview. You can knock on the door and say, hey, my name is whatever your name is. How are you? What is your research? What are you doing? How is your research? So how is your research? What are you doing? What is your life like outside of the classroom? What sort of problems do you encounter? Things like that. Get them talking. For those of you that have research, when someone asks you, hey, what is it that you do with your life? There's a good chance that you probably just blab for half an hour. And graduate students are even worse. They'll talk for an hour about it. So once you get them started and make that connection, they will go. And they can tell you a huge wealth of knowledge. And if you're from the grad student side, like me, you can much more easily have a teaching. So if there's any graduate students in the audience, this is really beneficial for the next generation of either astronomers or physicists or just people in the world to give them your experience. So try and make those connections. Go hang out in the SAS club room. I don't know if you guys have an SAS club room, but if you do, hang out there. Offer workshops to students. Offer them opportunities to give them advice that they really desperately seek, but they don't know where to get it from. And for those of you who are beyond that level, maybe faculty or people within the administration, there's a lot of things that can be done to help encourage these exchanges. In my experience in undergrad, we eventually did connect with the graduate students, and the department said, hey, guess what? We'll give you some money, and you guys can go and have dinners and have exchanges and talk about your research in life. And that allowed the next generation of students coming in to have that connection and have that line of communication. And it was a really great experience for them, and it is potentially great for everyone here. So take that home with you.
Thank you.
Questions? Yes.
Thank you. That was very.
It's working.
Okay. Sure it goes on. Could you speak a little more about how the SFSU Terminal Master's Program in particular facilitates connections between undergrads and graduate students?
Yeah, actually, specifically with the physics GRE, a lot of the terminal master students at our school wind up taking the GRE again because they're trying to go to a PhD program, and so they can kind of partner up with a lot of the undergrads who are getting ready to take it for the first time. And sometimes the undergrad will even have an opportunity to help the graduate student out because maybe it's a little fresher in their head, just had it more recently. Yeah.
So if you want these exchanges, the key is to have that line of communication. You need to be able to be in a situation where they're not some unknown other. They're not just the grad student that lives on the other side of the building. You have to get that line of communication going. And then once you do, you realize that you're really the same people. And just like you have these exchanges with fellow undergrads or fellow grad students, you can have that same thing across this line. And you can bridge the gap, just like your talk title.
Also, the terminal masters is not like purely academically themed. I think a lot of the people in the master's program are also considering things in industry, whereas if it was a PhD program, that may not be as common. I don't know if that was as much to your question, but
Yes.
Okay, so I'm an undergraduate at University of Virginia, and I was wondering, how does your school specifically facilitate this type of interaction that you mentioned? Is there, like, how does your club function, or what makes it happen?
our club is extremely casual, but I think for that reason, many people find it welcoming, and it was never really labeled as for a specific group of students. So I guess outside of like physics and astronomy, but it was never really labeled as like an undergraduate thing or anything like that. And so it's just so easy to wind up studying there. I think people typically go in there just because it's a quiet place to study, but because it's so available, it usually winds up just inviting a lot of different kinds of people.
Just be welcoming. Make sure that you don't try and put up those barriers. So, for example, specifically, the club is run by whatever students step up and do it. So Aaron and I are book officers, even though I'm a graduate student and he's an undergrad student. So just getting someone similarity there really sets the bar.
Okay, let's thank our speakers.